Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video we're diving into lecture 2 with a set of challenge questions designed to make you think a bit deeper about exercise physiology. So let's get started here. We are going to explore lactate threshold, VO2 max, RER, oxygen deficit in this lecture, and these are all key concepts that really explain what's happening inside your body when you exercise and sometimes intensely exercise. Some questions may even include a little callback to what we covered in lecture 1. I might put a link to it here, or maybe even give you a sneak peek into future topics in lecture 3 and 4. This is all part of a building spaced repetition model, that interleaving concept we talked about in the last video, towards your learning to help you retain all this knowledge. Remember, these are meant to challenge you, so don't worry if you don't get every answer on the first try. So let's get started and try to, well, level up your physiology understanding. Here we go, and again, just to quickly review, this is an example of what we're doing in this series, Bloom's Taxonomy, going to progressively harder type of questions. And just as a quick kind of refresher, as instructors, we use this to match how you study with what you're expected to know and do in your careers. Because basically exercise physiology exams move beyond just memorization, beyond that level 1 or level 2 of remember and understand. In this flow of going from lower order to high order understanding, it goes through different steps. Now, some examples of low order knowledge, which are still important, is just basic things. Define VO2 max, list some energy systems. But higher orders, which is where most of the good exams live in terms of challenging your knowledge, is things, well, basically included in that triangle. Compare, analyze, evaluate to help you. Because knowing facts doesn't just equal understanding physiology. You've got to be able to apply it. Now, how this applies to our class, basically, if you're trying to study for an exam and you want to study effectively, don't just memorize it. You're trying to go up that triangle there. Ask yourself, why does this happen? What is going on? How can I apply it? And apply it to a new scenario. Because good exam questions that go up the chain of Bloom's taxonomy are going to try to get you to start predicting outcomes based on your prior knowledge. The higher you go, the more you appreciate it and you can start explaining it to others. Because basically, if you can teach it, you probably understand it. If you're only studying at the remember level, at level 1, you're probably under-preparing for your exams. Exercise physiology lives in the apply, analyze, and explain space. All right, so let's get going here. Question 1. This is right up to an analyze level 4 question. A cyclist rides slightly above lactate threshold and feels burning in their legs after several minutes of onset of exercise. What causes this delayed onset of discomfort? Is it A, dehydration, B, gradual lactate accumulation exceeding the clearance, C, immediate glycogen depletion, or D, VO2 max reached early? Some of this may feel a little familiar to last week's questions, and the answer here is B. Riding above your lactate threshold produces lactate faster than the body can clear it. Simple balance. The first few minutes may feel fine, but gradual H+ accumulation lowers that pH, and that creates that classic burn effect. This delayed effect is really the hallmark of training in that heavy domain there. If you recall Dr. Skiba's lectures, or sorry, his information and his book, I really love it. I reference it here and there in videos and in the class. As you're going up next to me here from moderate to heavy to severe, this is dipping into that heavy domain. Not all the way into that draining your battery area, but this is how you, well, work on your lactate threshold and, importantly, your critical power. All right, next question. 2 athletes generate the same lactate during a sprint, but athlete A clears it faster. Why? This is apply your level of understanding of this material. A, higher blood volume, B, higher mitochondrial density and oxidative enzymes, C, lower resting heart rate, or D, greater fat oxidation capacity. Again, pause if you need it. Answer is B, yeah. So more mitochondria equals more pyruvate oxidation, right? You're able to go through glycolysis, hit pyruvate, send it into the mitochondria, which then equals more lactate shuttle efficiency and faster clearance. This is why trained athletes recover very quickly between intervals, where untrained folks like myself are exhausted and it takes forever. Question 3, this one's not too bad. Basic understand level 2. During an incremental treadmill test, VO2 plateaus despite increasing speed. What is the interpretation? Is it A, hyperventilation, B, VO2 max reached, C, lactate threshold has been measured, and D, mitochondrial failure? That doesn't sound good. The answer is not failure of your mitochondria. It's B. So a plateau, despite increasing workload, right, increasing the speed on your treadmill, is really the classic criterion for VO2 max. Even if your heart rate continues rising, recall that from one of the prior questions. This signals an absolute ceiling on oxygen delivery and use. Good job. Next question. Question 4, and this one's a great one because it's hitting the top of that triangle, talking about when you can teach it, you can understand it. This is you teaching another student. A student claims that lactate forms only when, well, no oxygen is present. What is the best way to correct that statement, correct your fellow student? Is it A, lactate forms only in slow twitch fibers, B, lactate forms only when pH is low, C, lactate does form even with oxygen present to regenerate NAD, or D, lactate forms only with high glycogen? Answer, again, pause if you need it, is C. Yeah, so lactate production does occur, even during aerobic work. So it's crucial. It basically regenerates NAD+, so glycolysis can continue. We talk about that in lecture. It is very important, lactate. It's not a sign of oxygen absence, but it's actually rather an efficient metabolic adaptation so that you can keep going. Lactate is not a waste product. Question 5, halfway through. A runner maintains an absolute VO2 max of 3 liters per minute, but gains 10 grams of fat. Oh no, that's not good. Over the years, I've gained a little bit of that, and I gotta work on that. What changes to their body physiology? Is it A, their absolute VO2 max goes down, B, their relative VO2 max goes down, C, their RER, respiratory exchange ratio, goes down, or D, their lactate threshold goes up? Pause if you need it, and the answer is B. Yeah, so absolute VO2 max stays the same. They can still achieve that same oxygenation. But the whole point of VO2 max is milliliters of oxygen per kilogram per minute. That's the point, per kilogram. So if you are gaining weight, the relative VO2 max is going to go down. And that clearly impacts performance, even though that aerobic machinery itself is unchanged. Think about it. If you're doing a VO2 max or a stressful bike ride up a hill or a run up a hill, you're now having to propel more weight up that hill, so that same level of oxygenation is not enough for that increased body weight. Question 6. During a long run, a runner's respiratory exchange ratio starts to drop from 0.95 to 0.80. What is going on? What is your interpretation of this? Did more carbs become present, right? They stopped at a Dunkin' Donuts along the way and grabbed something good. Glycogen storage is increasing or recovering, or maybe you're building back that glycogen. Same thing, maybe they stopped at a rest station and fueled up. C, more fat oxidation, or D, incomplete recovery. Now this one, maybe I didn't word this so well, but the answer is C. So it's a process of elimination. The other answers could not be correct. What I probably should have said is, as the duration of a run increases, your body kind of realizes you're going for the long haul and going for a long run. You tend to slow down a little bit and find that steady state, and the body shifts to try and prefer more fat oxidation to conserve glycogen, which is exactly what happens in a marathon race. You start out fast, that's what everyone does, that mass start, and your RER is very high, and then you settle into your run and you find naturally where you're going to maximize fat oxidation. And if you did have an RER as you were testing, it would drop down as the race increased and then find that steady state. So that lower RER reflects that metabolic shift. If you go back to the questions, A and B can't be correct because of the carbohydrate and glycogen amount. If you're starting to use more carbs, RER is going up. And then incomplete recovery, we talk about this in lecture, so look out for this. A sign of a true VO2 max test is actually an RER above 1, because you're maxing out your body's metabolic systems, and there's a reason why the RER goes above 1, which doesn't make physiological sense. So incomplete recovery would basically mean you're going towards a VO2 max. Your RER is only going to go up. Question 7. A large oxygen deficit at exercise onset suggests what? early reliance on anaerobic pathways, poor respiratory technique, excess ventilation, or low lactate production. This one's also kind of a tough one. Think about it, come up with your answer, which is right there, A. So oxidative phosphorylation does take time to kind of reach full gas, full speed. Until then, the ATP demands are, well, they have to be met by phosphagen, right? ATP, phosphocreatine, and the glycolytic pathways. So this is kind of a tough one until you start to think about your different metabolic pathways that you can utilize till you kind of reach max ox-phos, and then you'll get the answer. Question 8. Blood lactate measured 5 minutes after the onset of a Wingate sprint is much higher than at stopping. Why? And a quick pause, if you don't know what a Wingate test is, you hop on a bicycle, erg, or a stationary bike, you do 30 seconds of absolute all out, and then you rest for 4.5 minutes to recover, and then you repeat that about 5 times if you can. Some people think, oh, that's not so bad, just 30 seconds and I got 4.5 minutes to rest. If you do true 30 seconds all out, 4.5 minutes is barely enough. And once you do about 2 or 3, you are exhausted. I think I've only done this like once or twice. It is miserable. All right, questions, the possible answers. Lactate continues to be produced. Lactate diffuses from muscle to blood over minutes. The measurement is inaccurate, or buffering stops release. So this one's a tough one. Think about it. Pause, try to go through it, run the scenario in your head. Answer is B. So muscle lactate peaks during that sprint of the Wingate where you're going all out. The blood lactate peaks later because of just diffusion and transport time in the body. This is a little bit advanced than what we're at right now in lecture 2. And once you kind of appreciate this or remember this question and you see some of the mechanisms later on that we discuss in the class, this will kind of become more evident and hopefully you'll remember it more. So these are the fun part of these challenge questions. You dip a little into prior lectures and you start to dive into future content. Question 9. This one's a real tough one, high level. 2 runners have the same VO2 max, but runner A reaches lactate threshold at a higher percent VO2 max. Who performs better? I mean, maybe you can understand this. High level meaning you have to go through the steps of just remember and then understand and then basically analyze and apply up to evaluate. So is it runner A, runner B? They're both the same, or not enough information to determine this? It's usually not D. The answer is A. So lactate threshold is a much stronger predictor of race performance than VO2 max. We talk about this a lot in later lectures. A higher lactate threshold percent of your VO2 max means you can sustain race pace faster for longer. And it is just the magic of training. I've gone through, periodic races and whatnot where I do some training, and sometimes I'll just do VO2 max sprints basically in all out little intervals. Yeah, and I've certainly performed better because you're bumping up right to your VO2 max. But when you start to incorporate those 1 hour lactate threshold, those FTP tests, your functional threshold performance, your critical power test, where you just go for 1 hour at your lactate threshold, you do a couple of those over the course of a month or 2, your race pace just rises right up. It's really fascinating just how effective lactate threshold training can be. Last question. A swimmer records an RER greater than 1.10 after a race. Aha! Why? Is it pure fat use? Is it extra CO2 from buffering lactic acid? Mitochondria shutting down. We don't like that mitochondrial failure. Or D, low hemoglobin. Pause if you need it, but maybe you already figured it out. Yeah, that was a sign of a great VO2 max effort. Intense anaerobic effort results in high acidity that we talked about within this question bank. Taxes your bicarbonate buffering, which starts to shift that equation, if you remember from the lecture 1 questions we did, resulting in extra CO2, which pushes that RER way above 1, and that's exactly what we measure. I volunteered a couple times in the lab to do the VO2 max, and it's miserable to do it, but you can make sure that participant really did a hard effort and really hit their VO2 max when their RER just goes zoop, way above 1, and it's miserable. All right, that's it. Hope you enjoyed these questions. See you in the next one.